Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Exploring the Ocean by the Seat of Your Pants. My name is Joe Grabowski. I'll be your host for today. And if you haven't been following along, we have 50 events this week celebrating our ocean. So we're connecting with leading ocean scientists and explorers from all over the world, and they're sharing their passions for the ocean, why they like to explore, their discoveries, how they conserve this important resource. It's been a great week so far, and we're rolling right along. So very excited for our speaker right now, May Dorricott. May is a young ocean enthusiast and was the 2017 European Our World Underwater Scholarship Society's Rolex Scholar. She was able to embark on a year of worldwide travel to do with everything scuba and ocean. The scholarship enhanced her passion for the seas and showed her all kinds of new ways to explore the environment, as well as learn with some of the top leaders in marine biology, underwater photography, and science communication. So May, that sounds like just an absolutely incredible year.
Oh, yeah, it was insane. It was like a dream come true. I've always wanted to go and explore certain parts of the world, and I got the chance to with this amazing scholarship and the sponsorship from Rolex. So, yeah, it was phenomenal, and I learned a lot from it. Yeah.
I can only imagine. So I bet you have a little bit of those adventures to share with us here today.
I do indeed. So, shall I just crack on and start my little presentation for you guys?
Absolutely. Let's go.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining in on my little Google Hangout. Joe gave me a fantastic little introduction there. But what I wanted to do was start by telling you a bit about myself before I even became a Rolex scholar. So I'm going to do a bit of a screen share. Oh, there's Joe again. And if I swoop over here, you will see a little picture of me when I was around 3 years old. And this is when my passion for the seas all started. I'm very lucky to have a family from Malaysia. And so I got to go snorkeling in the most beautiful and pristine waters there were around. And I remember asking my teachers when I was around 10 years old, 11 years old, is there a job where I could stay in the water and in the sea as much as possible? I just wanted to be in the sea and have a job to do with it. And my teacher, Mr. Holsall, said, yeah, May, that's called a marine biologist. So I was like, right then, that is what I am going to be. So I kind of pursued it and I did everything I could to become a marine biologist. I learned how to scuba dive, I did lots of volunteering, and then I ended up doing a degree at Plymouth University in marine biology. And then I started to really clock onto something that not everyone else around me was that interested in the ocean. And I began aware of something called scientific communication. So I hopped on to a master's in science communication. But I started to miss the sea because I was stuck in a really big city. And then I found the most amazing opportunity, which was the Our World Underwater Scholarship Society's Rolex Scholarship. And it was the most fantastic year. I got to go to 14 countries. I visited, 14 different countries. I took around 30 flights to get to all these different countries. I dove into the sea over 160 times. I spent nearly 200 hours underwater and got to go to places like Micronesia, Fiji, Denmark, Egypt, Grand Cayman, Bahamas, New Zealand, Australia. The list goes on and on, but it wasn't just about just visiting these places. I wanted to push myself in all kind of areas of marine biology and scuba diving. So one of my first challenges was learning how to use this, a rebreather. It's a little bit different to normal scuba diving. It kind of recycles one breath of air. So instead of breathing in and then breathing out loads of bubbles, those bubbles go back into a loop. The carbon dioxide is taken out and oxygen is re-added. So basically what that means is I could stay under the water for 3 hours, sometimes 6 hours. It meant I could get a lot closer to wildlife, and it meant I could use it for scientific research. And this was what I wanted to do. I wanted to get involved with cutting edge marine biology. And I was lucky enough to get invited by the most amazing marine biologist, in my opinion, called Dr. Sonia Rowley. Now, Sonia uses rebreather technology to go into an environment that is very poorly studied. It's called the twilight zone. And it's from around 60 meters to 140 meters deep in the sea. Now, this area is too deep for normal scuba diving and way too shallow for things like ROVs and submarines. And because it's so poorly studied, there's so much left to discover. And these animals are the things that Sonia really studies in this place called the Twilight Zone. These are Gorgonians and sea fans, and they dominate this deep twilight zone. And because not many people have been there, she can pick up new species on every single dive that she goes on. And it takes her a while to get down there. And when she's down at this depth, it takes her 6 hours to come back up really, really slowly so she doesn't hurt herself. And it was amazing to see this woman in action. And I was, again, injected with more passion to explore all these different habitats the sea had. Now, I was only a beginner at rebreather diving, so I couldn't go and join her down at 140 meters. But instead, I stayed at the shallow portions of the reef and gathered other data for her. And it was, again, a really fantastic opportunity for me to be at the forefront of cutting edge science. We were diving places that no one had ever been to before. And I actually even had a dive site named after me. It's called Maze Day on Ant Atoll on Ponape. It's pretty cool, right in the middle of the Pacific. No one has ever been there before. And I have a dive site named after me. However, we were in this most amazing place, but there were some problems that we started to see, and I want to show you 2 videos. This video here is of a dive site on one of these very remote atolls in the middle of the Pacific, and this was a video Sonia took of her previous expedition that she went in 2016. Now, as you can see, the reef looks super healthy. The coral is really, really healthy. There's loads of fish, and it's full of color. Now, she showed me this video just before we went back to this exact same dive site to survey it again and to see what the health was like. But unfortunately, when we jumped in this in 2017, this is what we saw instead. You can see the corals have been covered in this pink stuff. There's no more color, and there's hardly any fish. And this was a really big problem that we started to see in the shallow portions of the reef. They'd been hit really hard with coral bleaching. So the corals had lost their color. And because they weren't able to survive, this pink stuff is called crustose coralline algae. And it just grew over all of the corals, encapsulating them, almost mummifying them. And you can see what the corals were, but they're all just dead. And if you can also see there's some green fluffy stuff, that's because there's hardly any fish here. These reefs have been overfished so much by international fishing fleets that the natural lawnmowers of the reef, which are herbivorous reef fish, weren't there anymore to keep this algae at bay. So it was overgrowing the reef. It was really sad to see. And this whole combination of overfishing and coral bleaching was, it was a bit heart crunching really, and I was super sad. But what gave me hope was the fact that we were really transparent with the locals there. We talked a lot with the local people that we were staying with, and we went out and did talks like I'm doing to you, to other schools and the colleges that were in Ponape. And it made me realize that they do care about their reefs, but they can't see it. They're not scuba divers. They don't have the ability like we do to go underneath the sea and see what was happening. So they didn't know. So that started to make my brain clock into action about scientific communication. Maybe I could be more than just a marine biologist and see all these things and study it, but I wanted to share it with other people, and especially with the people who that resource belongs to. So I wanted to learn how to use underwater photography, and I got to learn with some of the best underwater photographers there are out there. One of them being Dr. Alex Mustard. He is a brilliant photographer, and he took me to Egypt and the Red Sea, and we got to see loads of animals, big groups of spawning fish. We got to do wrecks, and it made me realize that if I could capture an image of the marine organisms down in their natural habitat, maybe I could hold someone's attention long enough for them to question, how does this animal live its life? And I got to do this again when I was invited by William Tam to Lende, and we got to see all these crazy looking animals that live in the black mud of the Lende Strait in Indonesia. And here we saw the manta shrimp with the strongest punch in the animal kingdom, nudibranchs, which look like something out of a Picasso painting, hairy frogfishes, and mimic octopuses. But it wasn't for the creatures of the day that we really came to see. What was really cool was when we waited till nighttime and we threw in a torch off the back of the boat, and what we'd see is all the creatures of the night and the deep come swarming around this torch like a moth to a flame. And I began to realize that through underwater photography, we could capture animals that people don't normally even think about. These guys William took a picture of, and remember, these are macroscopic. They're less than a centimeter big, but look how beautiful they are. And sometimes we don't even think that these guys even exist. But again, through the power of photography, I could take pictures of things that weren't exactly great, but needed to be noticed. Plastic pollution. In the place of the highest biodiversity that I'd ever seen in Indonesia, there was so much plastic. It literally covered everywhere, and all of the animals were surrounded by it. This is a little video that I took of a pipefish feeding on all the tiny little animals that we were trying to get pictures of. And if you can see, he's clinging on to a bit of plastic bag. But it's not just about these animals being surrounded by plastic. They do end up eating it too. And in Micronesia, there was a washed up turtle. And when we dissected it, we found all of these fragments of plastic bags in its stomach. I got to help out with a group that do deep sea science called Necton Mission. And I was sampling sediment that they had taken from 6,000 meters deep, a place that no one had ever been to before. Plastic had made its way there before we had. And it impacts the largest animals in the sea. This was a drone shot my friend got in Mexico, a place which is famous for its whale sharks. This whale shark was the only one I saw, though, unfortunately, and it had been washed up on a beach as it had been entangled in a fishing net for a couple of days in the bay before it eventually died and washed up on shore. We're creating a bit of a mess, as I began to see, and everywhere I went, I saw plastic. And as you can see in this picture that my friend Libby took, there's so much plastic ending up in the sea, things that we use every single day. Water bottles, spoons, forks, a frisbee, these are like Nerf gun bullets, I think, bottle tops. Everything you can imagine that we use, which is made out of plastic, does make its way into the sea. And it's a really frustrating thing for me because I think plastic pollution represents something bigger than just polluting the oceans. It represents the fact that we are almost becoming disconnected from the sea. We forget that we'll use this and we throw it away, and we don't necessarily think, where is that item going to go? It might end up in a turtle, or it might end up being a hermit crab's home. We've got to start thinking that the ocean is a part of our everyday environment, even if we can't see it every single day. And the thing is, we need to protect it because there is so much magic in the sea. And I want to finish off by just showing you some of the most amazing things I was able to experience, and reminds me how much magic there is in the sea. On a trip to Baja, California, in a place called Magdalena Bay, you can go and pat a newborn grey whale. The mother grey whales come into this really shallow bay and they give birth to their calves. And they have this history of allowing people to come over and touch their newborn calves. Now just imagine if we could have that interaction with all creatures, if we respected the sea in a way that the sea creatures respected us back. I think that would be truly magical. But maybe what we need to do is change perceptions, and a place where I definitely saw people's perceptions change was when I got to go to South Australia and dive with great white sharks. It was the most epic experience of my scholarship year because I got to see people's faces literally change when they saw the best predator in the sea swim by them. And how you see them is that you drop down into their belly of the environment in a cage. It's different from a zoo. You're not seeing the animals behind cage. You're the one behind the cage. And they come and they swing by and their big brown eyes stare you down, but they're not aggressive. They're really, really curious. And it was probably one of the most humbling experiences of my year, being able to come this close to a great white shark. And sometimes we got so close to them and felt so comfortable, we got some gimmick shots. And this was my friend Sam, who found a giant toothbrush on board the boat and wanted to get a picture trying to brush the great white shark's teeth. I wouldn't recommend this, but it turned out to be quite a good picture. But there's still so much to learn about these animals, even though they're so widely known around the world as these amazing predators. We still have so much to learn about them. And again, I got to help out on some science here, where we were not only tagging the sharks, but trying to figure out how they responded to different repellents on surfboards to try and protect surfers when they entered the sea. And that's something I think is really important to remember, because when we enter the sea, we're entering that animal's home and their environment. So we have to respect them as much as we want them to respect us. But in conclusion to my epic worldwide whirlwind year, I got to see some amazing things. But the one thing that has stuck with me is the amount of plastic in the sea. And now, as I finished my scholarship year, that's how we could change people's perception about plastic. I'd love to hear your thoughts about whether you think plastic is a threat, and whether you're frightened by the amount of plastic in the sea, and what you think we can do to solve this problem. Because at the end of the day, all of you guys are going to be the future in protecting the sea, just like me. I'm still trying to figure out where I am, and yeah, that's pretty much a very fast whirlwind tour of my year as a Rolex scholar.
Well, May, thank you so much. That was excellent. I mean, it looks like you had quite a year. A little bit jealous
Yeah.
over here.
I tried to fit in as much as I could, but there's so many stories that I can't even tell you guys in 20 minutes. Maybe we could tease them out with a few questions.
All right, excellent. Well, I really like how you made that point about the sharks and seeing them in their own environment. And it reminds me of what someone told me once, is it's ridiculous to call it shark-infested waters because sharks live there. That's where they belong. So it's more like people-infested waters.
Yeah,
somewhere we really belong.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. Well, let's meet some classrooms, because I know they're going to have some questions about your crazy year of adventure.
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right, let's start off with Mrs. Moore's class. They're sixth graders, in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Let me turn their microphone on. Oh, actually, you're just off my screen, Mrs. Moore, so if you don't mind unmuting for me, then we'll be able to do the question.
Can you hear us now?
Yep, we got you.
Okay, here's our question coming up. What is your favorite thing that you learned while you were studying marine biology?
Oh, that is such a good question. I really enjoyed studying evolution within marine biology. It was really interesting to kind of think about how animals have evolved over such a long period of time to be where they are right now and how they fit into the ecosystem as they are right now. Sometimes we think that the smallest things in the sea are really primal, but you've got to think if it has survived since the beginning of time to now, it's done really, really well. And another thing that I really enjoyed studying was how animals survive when they're not even hatched out of an egg yet. That is another environment. A lot of things in the sea spend the majority of their life cycle as an embryo or as a larva. So how do they survive when they're not even a full adult yet in this amazing environment which has so many different variables? So yes, I enjoyed my learning all of that, which opened my eyes quite a bit. So yeah, good question.
All right, perfect. So let's see, let us go to Freehold, New Jersey this time. We have a grade 3 class joining us with Mrs. Close. Let me turn on their microphone. How are we doing, grade 3s?
Hi, my name is Sophie, and I was wondering if it was scary diving with the white sharks.
Oh, that's a really good question, Sophie. So at first, the first time I saw a great white shark, I was actually on the boat. And it kind of just came out of nowhere and its fin just like sliced up like a knife out of the water. And it took me, I swear, like 3 minutes to realize that I'd just seen a great white shark, and my face was like, as I watched this thing swim past me. And after that initial shock of seeing this amazing creature, once I was in the water, I was just really excited to see them, to be honest. I wasn't scared at all because they're really graceful. They kind of swim by you like they're not even swimming. They don't even make any effort with their tail when they glide by. So it was really hard to be scared. I was just more excited and full of adrenaline, to be honest. But yeah, no scary, not scary at all. But yeah, good question.
Okay, great question. So we're going to swing through each classroom, then we'll make a round and we'll come back. So this time we're going to go to Cedar Rapids. We're going to visit some more grade 3s with Mrs. Heckart. Let me turn her microphone on now. Hey, grade 3s.
Hi. Hey, guys.
Oops, I think you got muted again. Can you? Okay, you guys are ready if you have a question.
How much plastic does each animal eat every year?
Oh, that is a really good question. And I can't really answer it, to be honest, because although we're starting to understand how much plastic is in the sea, we only really find the odd animal that gets washed up that has ingested that much plastic to actually die. And I reckon every single animal in the sea is ingesting plastic of some sort. Because do you remember I showed you that picture of all the really tiny plastics? All the smaller fish mistake them for their food, so they eat it. And then another bigger fish might eat that fish, and then that bigger fish has got the plastic in its stomach. But it's a hard one to average out. I can't really answer that one, but I know that a lot of animals, probably most animals in the sea, do ingest plastic at all scales of the food chain. But if you think about it, we're throwing in so much plastic into the ocean. I think it's like a truckload of plastic goes into the ocean every single minute at least. So if you think about that amount of plastic going into the sea, something's bound to mistake it for food and eat it up. So yes, it's a bit of a sad one, but a lot of animals are eating plastic at the moment.
Yes, that is, it's frustrating. We put a lot in the ocean and then we eat the fish. So now we're eating some of that plastic too. So
Yeah.
not a great situation.
No, I think there's a few studies where it's actually proven that we've got plastic in our system now. If we eat seafood, it's going that far up the food chain that it's ending up in us.
All right, let us go to Verona, Wisconsin this time. We've got some 4th and 5th graders with Mrs. Ryder. Let me turn on her microphone. Hey, 4th and 5th graders.
Hey.
Okay, guys.
So our question is, what animal impacted you the most?
Wait, can you say that one again?
What animal impacted you the most?
What animal impacted me the most?
Yes.
So I do love the great white sharks. They are totally epic. But I am always captivated by octopuses and squids because they're really intelligent. And every time I've come across them on a dive, I feel like I'm having a proper interaction with an animal. I remember on one night dive where it was pitch black and we were swimming around on a reef, there was a school of squid that was circling me. And then a baby squid around this big came right over to me, and I had my torch like this up to my chest, and it came over and it was just like tickling my torch. And then I moved my torch slightly to the side, and this squid came all the way up to my neck and was just tickling my neck with his tentacles. And I was like, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. And then it squirted away really quickly into the night. And that was probably one of the best interactions I've ever had underwater. It was only like a tiny little squid, but it was one of those moments where I felt like another animal was really interacting with me. So yeah, I love squids and octopuses. They're really cool.
All right. Great story and great question. We're going to go to Mrs. Smith's class. 7th graders joining us in North Royalton, Ohio. Let me turn their microphone on. Hey, grade 7.
Hello.
Hey guys.
If I wanted to start a career in marine biology, what would I study?
Ooh, very, very good question. So biology, straight up, that's a very good one to have. You kind of need that. I'm not sure. I don't know if you could tell I'm from England, but the system in England may be quite different from America. And to get into a university, you have to have like 3 subjects, first of all. And one of those, if you want to study marine biology, has to be biology. And then what I would recommend is do something like chemistry, because chemistry is a really big part of learning about how everything operates. So study something like chemistry, and then any other subject that you're interested in. You could even mix it with an art subject, because to be a scientist, sometimes you have to be creative. You've got to think outside the box and think about questions that no one has previously asked before, because that's what science is about, right? Finding things out that no one knows the answers to. So if you do an art subject, you're always maintaining that creative side of your brain, and that would definitely help you in something like marine biology, of finding new solutions to problems that people haven't even thought about before.
Okay, and our final live classroom is joining us from San Antonio, Texas. It's a grade 11 class with Mrs. Brown. Let me turn their microphone on. How are we doing, grade 11s? Oh, I don't.
What was your favorite research location when you were traveling?
Ooh, definitely, hands down, Micronesia, Ponape. It was the most remote location that I went to. It took me 3 days to get there, with 5 different flights. And when I got there, it was this, not only an absolutely gorgeous island and beautiful reefs, but it had an amazing culture that I loved learning about, and I got to spend a month there. So not only did I get to learn about the scientific expedition sides of things inside out, but I got to spend a lot of time with the local people and their local culture, and it just felt a bit like a family there, really. So definitely Ponape, Micronesia. It's a beautiful part of the world.
Awesome. So I was just sent a question by one of the classrooms, and they're wondering if you have a Twitter or a Facebook.
I do have a Twitter, but I have an Instagram. Yeah, my Instagram I'm a bit more active on, not my Twitter. I never use it. It confuses me too much. But yeah, my Instagram is MAEKLD.
All right. So there you go. If you want to see some more pictures and follow May's adventures going forward, Instagram's the place to do it. So let's swing around and visit some more of our classrooms again. So let's go back to New Jersey with Mrs. Close's group and see if they have another question.
My question is, when did you start studying marine biology, and what do you want to study next in marine biology?
Oh, that's an awesome question. So if you're asking when do you start or when did I start, I guess I started when I first really got into snorkeling, because every time I went snorkeling, I just come back out and get a book which had loads of pictures of animals to try and figure out which animal was which. And so if you're asking when can anyone else start learning marine biology, start right now. There is nothing holding you back from reading more about something that really interests you. You can watch all the documentaries that there are on the sea, and that's a baseline for building up a knowledge of the sea, and just read loads of books. There's so many books about the sea that can really start to fuel your interest and direct you of where specifically in marine biology you want to go. For me, where I'm going now is kind of a bit away from studying animals in the sea, but more studying about how humans interact with the sea. And that's why plastic is such an important thing for me, because that's probably the biggest impact that we are having on the ocean at the moment, in my opinion. So what I'm doing now is studying how people perceive their behavior and how that impacts the sea.
Great question. Thank you, New Jersey.
Yeah, thank you.
Mrs. Hecker's class, your microphone's back on again.
How many animals die from plastic each year?
Oh, again, you guys are giving me these really hard questions. Again, I can't really answer that one because there's so much of the ocean that we just haven't got eyes on constantly. So there are animals probably in the middle of the Pacific Ocean where hardly anybody is, where nobody really even gets to go that often. And animals are probably constantly eating plastics and dying from it, but we just can't see it. We only really start to see it when a whale gets washed up on our shore. But I'm sure that there's more than that happening in the ocean. That's just when it becomes visual for us, when it comes terrestrial. When it comes on land, then we can see it. But there's a lot happening out there that we just can't always observe because we're not always out at sea. We're not always underneath the sea. So if we could enhance our way of monitoring it, then maybe we could figure out the answer to that question. But at this moment in time, again, we're still working on that answer.
All right, and that's okay. That's we don't know the answer to everything yet, and that's why there's so much left for us to explore and discover. So lots of careers in marine biology and all kinds of other cool sciences that you can pursue. So let's visit, there we go, Mrs. Writer's class again, our grade 4-5s. You guys have another question.
Yeah, we would like to ask a question. If you could be any sea animal, which one would you be?
I think I would be a manta ray because they've got one of the biggest brains in the marine world, and they're so graceful, and they're just ocean nomads. They just go and travel the ocean, and it just seems like really cool to just like fly underwater. And I feel like I'm a bit of a nomad myself, just keep on traveling. So I think a manta ray is almost my soul animal. I haven't actually ever seen a manta ray though, which breaks my heart because I'd love to see one. But once I see one, I'll be like, yes, you are my spirit animal. So yes, I'd like to be a manta ray.
All right, very cool. Well, it's great to have that connection even before you get to meet one. Probably going to be pretty special.
Yeah.
All right, back to Mrs. Smith's class. If you guys have another question, your mic's on.
You talked about how much plastic is in the ocean. How do you think we can help to reduce the amount of plastic is in the ocean?
Awesome question. I was waiting for someone to ask me that. So during my year, I spent a lot of time visiting different people, trying to figure out how are we going to solve what we now call the plastic plague. And one massive thing that we can all do, you can all do, you should all do, is reduce the amount of single-use plastic that you use. So don't buy water in a plastic water bottle. Buy a refillable water bottle, which you can refill all the time. Don't use a straw. Don't buy coffee with a coffee lid on it, because that's just going to get thrown away. All these different things that you use once and you throw away, try and cut them out from your day-to-day use. You know, take bags to the supermarket so you can put your food in them instead of using the plastic bags at the end of the checkout. Those different types of things will definitely help reduce it, but I don't think that's going to be the cure, because there's so much stuff that is made up of plastic. I challenge you all now from today, see how much plastic is around in your day-to-day life and think about where is that going to go after you don't see it anymore. We need to move away from plastic and produce materials that are biodegradable, that we can replace instead of plastic. And I think that's where we've got to start working towards now. And I think you guys are almost the future in that. Like we don't just need marine biologists to solve this problem. Like marine biologists are only be able to see what's happening and tell other people what's happening. We need politicians to make the change. We need engineers to create new things, to, you know, a new recycling system, or again, a new thing instead of plastic. So there's a whole bunch of things really when it comes to how are we going to solve the issue with plastic pollution. We're really only starting to scratch the surface with it. So yeah, a whole bunch of things. It's a can of worms when it really opens up, but it's exciting. And I think now that awareness is starting to really build with plastic pollution, we're going to start seeing a lot of changes in society to try and cut plastic from ending.
It really does feel like that. It feels like now there finally is a little bit of momentum. The latest National Geographic cover was related to plastics in our ocean. That story about the pilot whale washing up on shore with the bags in his stomach. It just feels like now it's finally starting to gain a little bit of momentum, which is a good thing. Yeah, and I just hope that it doesn't stop. That, you know, we keep on with this momentum, generate change, and it isn't just something that's a sudden peak in interest and it'll just fade away. Right. All right, so we're going to visit our last two classrooms. We're going to visit Mrs. Brown's class first to see if they have a question, then we'll wrap up with Mrs. Moore's class. So San Antonio, Texas, grade 11s, if you have another question, the mic is on.
They wanted to know, what's the animal that you would like to next do research on or to learn more about? I dream, well, like I said, I've kind of turned away a little bit from studying sea animals. I would like to go back to it after I kind of solve this plastic pollution issue. But the dream would be to work on octopuses and squids and cephalopods, really, because I think they are just so interesting. They're so intelligent,
And the way that they have evolved to survive in the marine environment is completely otherworldly, if you like, but that is even more interesting because it is so a part of our world. So yes, octopuses and squids would be the ideal organism to work on.
I know exactly what you mean. One of my favorite dives was in Cozumel, the night dive. And I got to follow an octopus hunting on the reef and watch it change color and change shape and pounce on little marine life. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right. And one more visit, Mrs. Moore, if you don't mind, in North Carolina, turning on your mic for me. You guys can have the final question.
Okay, May, this is from the group that just left our class. They wanted to know, are there perhaps more undiscovered animals in the deepest zone that we cannot reach yet? Maybe some ancient animals from long ago that cannot be seen yet, or that we have not actually seen?
I think so. Yeah, completely. Why not? I mean, if you didn't see before, there was an amazing ocean explorer on Dr. Ballard, and he studies the deep sea. But we know more about the dark side of the moon than we know about our oceans, and our oceans are part of our planet. Yet there are parts that we haven't even seen before, and we're discovering new species every single day. The lady that I got to spend time with in Micronesia, Sonia Rowley, every time she went on a dive, she would find new species purely through the fact that no one had been to that spot before. And there is just so much biodiversity in the sea, and it's so dynamic that organisms are evolving constantly. So there's always new species coming about. So yes, there are definitely species that we haven't found yet, and maybe some ancient ones too. I'm not too sure about that, but I'd like to think so.
Excellent. Well, if you look at some scientists' estimates, there could still be millions of species left to discover. So don't let anyone ever tell you there's nothing left to explore or discover, because they don't really know what they're talking about.
Nope.
All right. Well, May, I can't thank you enough. That was a ton of fun. Thank you for sharing some of your year with us, and then answering the questions for the classrooms. And classrooms, as always, thank you for your questions. Great questions as always. And it's a ton of fun to be able to share with you and learn with you. So thank you so much, May.
No worries. Thank you guys for having me. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Well, the last thing we'll do is I'll turn on the microphones and give the classes a chance to say goodbye and thank you. So it might get loud in here, and then we'll sign off for the day. So here we go, boys and girls. Nice and loud. Goodbye and thank you. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Again, May, thank you so much. And yeah, don't forget, all this week long, continuing today through till Friday, we have tons more ocean events. So check them out, and I look forward to seeing everyone again.